Okay, today I'm going to be talking about one book of the Bible, the Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim. Now let's go back to a few basic concepts. There's something called the Tanakh, the Bible. It's made up of the Torah, of the prophets, and the writings. And the writings include many different kinds of books. It includes the book of Job, which is about God's justice. Is God fair? Why do bad things happen to good people? There's the book of Ecclesiastes, which starts out 0, 0, everything is zero. It's a strange book of the Bible. It talks about, is there meaning? It asks, is there meaning in life? Is everything meaningless? Is there a heaven? Are you going to die like a dog? There is the book of Esther, which never even mentions the name of God. And you have all of these different books, and they make up the Tanakh. They also make up what we often call the canon, C-A-N-O-N, not like the weapon of war. And the question is, why do certain books make it into the Bible and other ones don't? We know of many books that were written in the same time period, like the Wisdom of Ben Sira, which is very pious and very religious and very wise, and it didn't make it in. We know about the book of Tobit, which is a very nice story about very nice, pious people. Didn't make it into the Bible. We know about 1st and 2nd Maccabees, the story of Hanukkah. That didn't make it into the Bible, didn't make it into the Tanakh, didn't make it into the canon. So the question is, why do certain books make it in and other books not? And the book I'm talking about today, the Song of Songs, is very unusual because it seems to be a bunch of love poems, sometimes erotic love poetry. It starts out by saying, as you can see on the screen, this is Solomon's Song of Songs. It was written by King Solomon, but very few critical scholars think that King Solomon wrote this book. There's something called, it's the fancy word, pseudepigrapha, attributing to some very famous person something that that person did not actually write. But Solomon was supposed to be one of the wisest of men. And this is called Solomon's Song of Songs. And we'll talk in a minute about why that might be. And because there are some references to the king, but nobody that I know who's a critical scholar thinks that King Solomon wrote this book. But the bigger question is, what is a bunch of love songs doing in the Bible? And I'm just going to start to read for you. Kiss me and kiss me again, for your love is sweeter than wine. How pleasing is your fragrance. Your name is like the spreading fragrance of scented oils. No wonder all the young women love you. Take me with you. Come, let's run. The king has brought me into his bedroom. Let's go a little bit further down. I am dark but beautiful, O women of Jerusalem. Dark as the tents of Kedar. Dark as the curtains of Solomon's tents. Don't stare at me because I'm dark. The sun has darkened my skin. My brothers were angry with me. They forced me to care for their vineyards, so I couldn't care for myself, my own vineyard. Is there something sexual there? Is she not protecting her own virginity or her own sexuality? And now all of a sudden it shifts again. What does this have to do with the king? It seems to be talking about the king. It's talking about Solomon's tents in the third person. Now watch this in verse 7. Tell me, my love, where are you leading your flock today? Where will you rest your sheep at noon? For why should I wander like a prostitute among your friends and their flocks? So it seems to be here about a girl who's chasing after a guy. And there's going to be a lot of that. There's going to be guys chasing after girls and girls chasing after guys. What? This is in the Bible? And there seems to be a response. If you don't know, a most beautiful woman, follow the trail of my flock and graze your young goats by the shepherd's tents. And now it shifts again. It's like little snippets of songs, almost like you were hearing a medley on the radio, a little bit of one song, a little bit of another song. And what is this doing in the Bible? It's almost like you had, again, a few lines from a lot of hit songs, or maybe these are whole songs. Maybe these few lines are the whole song. And now we're reading about your cheeks and your love and your earrings and your jewelry and your beads of silver. And sometimes this actually gets erotic. There are descriptions of a woman's body. There are descriptions of a man's body. Uh, and it's very confusing. I've turned the page. Um, Look at chapter 2, verse 2. Like a lily among thistles is my darling among young women. Like the finest apple tree in the orchard is my lover among other young men. I sit in his delightful shade and taste his delicious fruit. One of the things you have in this book is a lot of nature imagery. Now think back to a story that we all know, the Garden of Eden. And keep the Garden of Eden in your mind. There's scholars who think that somehow this book is taking us back to innocence, to a kind of sexual innocence. Young men, young women exploring their sexuality, but you step back again and say, what? This is in the Bible? What does this have to do with King Solomon? Where do we place this historically? What does this have to do with anything? The Bible is filled with laws and history and proverbs, prophecy. This is in the Bible? Over and over again, I come back to a key word, which is the word pluralism. That the Bible has things. I've never been to a Chinese restaurant in my life, but I hear that at least at one point they'd have, you pick one thing from column A and one thing from column B and one thing from column C. It's almost like this is column E, that there's a book of erotic love poetry in the Bible. But some of the poetry is very beautiful. Verse 8, ah, I hear my lover coming. He's leaping over the mountains, bounding over the hills. My lover is like a swift gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he is behind the wall, looking through the window, peering into the room. My lover said to me, rise up, my darling, come away with me, my fair one. Listen to this. Look, the winter is past, and the rains are over and gone. The flowers are springing up, the season of singing birds has come, and the cooing of turtle doves fills the air. The fig trees are forming young fruit, and the fragrant grapevines are blossoming. Rise up, my darling, come away with me, my fair one. The winter's past, it's spring. Life is ahead of us. Love is wonderful. Let's go. Let's go live our life. And verse 16, my lover is mine, and I am his. He browses among the lilies. Dodi li, ani dodi. Dodi means love. I am for my beloved, and my beloved is for me. People say this at weddings to this day. So in the middle of these different situations, there are women chasing men, men chasing women. In the middle of all this, there'll be these certain songs that are very strikingly beautiful. Now, but there can also be a dark dimension to this. Listen to this. Chapter 3. One night as I lay in bed, I yearned for my lover. I yearned for him, but he did not come. So I said to myself, I will get up and roam the city, searching in all its streets and squares. I will search for the one I love. So I searched everywhere, but did not find him. Now, I'm not sure what's going on, but there seems to be a story here, and it's unlike anything we've seen so far in this book, that she wakes up and he's not there. Now, why isn't he there? Is he out looking for other people? The watchmen stopped me as they made their rounds, and I asked, have you seen the one I love? Then scarcely had I left him when I found my love. I caught him and held him tightly. Then I brought him to my mother's house, into my mother's bed where I had been conceived. You know, a Freudian psychoanalyst could have a field day with that one. She's taking him back to her mother's bed. Promise me, O women of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and wild deer, not to awaken love until the time is right. Let us make love, and nobody, do not disturb. And then the scene shifts. The young women of Jerusalem. Who is this sweeping in from the wilderness? It's Solomon's carriage. Now we have something about Solomon, and he's got his panoply, he's got his carriage, he's got his canopy. And so the scenes keep shifting. The subject keeps shifting, and there is no consistent narrative. There is no consistent thread through these different songs, as if you were turning the channels of the radio. Do people still listen to the radio? You were going through Spotify, you were going through Pandora, and you didn't have a channel. It was just different songs coming through. Here in the next chapter, in chapter 4, there's a description of a body. You are beautiful, my darling, beautiful beyond words. Your eyes are like doves behind your veil. Your hair falls in waves like a flock of goats winding down the slopes of Gilead. I don't recommend this to anybody who's trying to pick up somebody to say that your hair is like a flock of goats. I don't think that would work today, but maybe it worked then. Your teeth are as white as sheep, recently shorn and freshly washed. I might not try that one either. Your smile is flawless, each tooth matched with its twin. Can you imagine coming up to somebody and saying, you have really great teeth? Your lips are like scarlet ribbon. Your mouth is inviting. Your cheeks are like rosy pomegranates behind your veil. Your neck is as beautiful. Your breasts are like two fawns of a gazelle grazing among the lilies. This is the Bible? You have an anatomy lesson. So let me pause to tell you a little story. I was once teaching a class, a college class, teaching these passages. And I explained that I have had a teacher, Dr. Robert Gordis, who I always like to quote on this subject, because Dr. Gordis would say that every book of the writings is wisdom literature, is something that's teaching you something. And when somebody asked him, well, you know, what does this teach you? He was stumped, but he said something about the wisdom of love. So I told a class that once, and one young man raised his hand. He says, yes, it is teaching something. It's a sex manual for men. It's a sex manual for guys, so you can learn about a woman's body. I'm not sure that that's true. But the question is, why do you have this lesson? Why is there a description of the woman's body? Down in verse 16, awake north wind, rise up south wind, blow on my garden, spreads fragrance all around. Come into your garden, my love, taste its finest fruits. There's a lot of sexuality here, a lot of metaphor, and notice how there's nothing, it's all very natural. It's nature imagery. It's about flocks of goats and pomegranates and fruit. This is a little bit about the Song of Songs. Let me try to round this up a little bit. There was a discussion among the rabbis, among the ancient rabbis, and they were trying to decide, should this book make it into the Bible or not? And somebody said the kind of thing that I was saying, which is, this shouldn't make it into the Bible. It's saloon songs. That's the expression he used. These are songs that are sung at saloons. Why in the world would you think about putting this into the Bible? And one of the most famous ancient rabbis, Rabbi Akiva, said something incredible. He said, no, this is all metaphorical. It's not about a man and a woman at all, or these different men and these different women. What it's about is God and the Jewish people, God and Israel. He says that there's a love affair between God and Israel. And sometimes God is searching for the Jewish people, saying, please, come back to me. And sometimes it's the other way. The Jewish people are saying to God, where are you? I woke up and you weren't there. So Rabbi Akiva says, this is talking about the covenant. Remember what the covenant is. At Mount Sinai, the Jewish people made a marriage contract. You can call it the Ten Commandments or the Torah, to follow Jewish laws. And it was like a marriage. And over in the Bible, God will say, I will be your God and you'll be my people. And the people say, you'll be my God and we'll be your people. It's a covenant. It's a marriage. But things can happen in a marriage. And so his idea was, Rabbi Akiva's idea was that this whole book is about the beautiful love affair between God and the Jewish people. Now, you might say that's far-fetched. Well, it may be far-fetched, but that's what enabled this book to get into the Bible. Just that idea. But there is something behind it, because there always was this feeling about God and the Jewish people being in this covenant, being in this marital relationship. So that's a little bit about the Song of Songs. Why did it make it in? Let's try a different theory, not Rabbi Akiva's theory. Perhaps it goes back to the idea of pluralism, that you do want a book about love in the Bible. Not so much a manual or something like that, but a book about love, because love is part of things. But also, remember that Garden of Eden idea. you read this book and you're taken back to innocence. You're taken back to youth. You're taken back to certain things that a lot of us lose. Unfortunately, a lot of us lose our innocence way too early. A lot of us lose our belief in love way too early. And this book sort of restores it, or at least tries to take us back. And all that nature imagery takes us back to the Garden of Eden, so to the first man and the first woman and their relationship. So I think that there's a wonderful place for the Song of Songs. And the ancient rabbis, in putting the canon together and putting the Tanakh together, really did have something from all the different columns. And this book is a beautiful complement to all of the other things that exist in the Bible. Thank you. If I blew it when it went like that at the end.